Imagine a world of gleaming penthouses, designer suits, and lavish galas, where fortune and glamour conceal toxic secrets beneath the glittering surface. Welcome to the tangled life of Alexander Davenport, a self-made millionaire who built an empire but risked shattering it all for an affair with a cunning mistress. When the mistress, Clarissa Monroe, posts an ultrasound picture as a joke, the scandal explodes in high society circles. Meanwhile, Alexander's pregnant wife Emily, armed with heartbreak and righteous anger, fires back with a court summons. Betrayals unravel, alliances shift, and shocking twists emerge in this scandalous saga of power, passion, and vengeance. Alexander Davenport was born in the suburbs of upstate New York in a modest two-bedroom bungalow that housed a family of 5. From a tender age, he was determined to break free from the constraints of small-town life. Even as a child, he devoured books about finance and business. While his siblings spent summer afternoons playing tag or riding bikes, Alexander could be found hunched over tattered copies of Forbes, circling names of influential business leaders like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, repeating to himself that one day he would join their ranks. The Davenports prided themselves on honesty and hard work. Alexander's father, Jacob Davenport, worked as a construction foreman who spent grueling hours at work to provide for the family. His mother, Marie, took various odd jobs, cleaning houses, waitressing, stitching dresses to supplement the family income. They instilled in Alexander the value of perseverance. However, as he grew older, the distance between Alexander and his father widened. Jacob believed in an honest day's labor, but Alexander believed in a bigger destiny. When Alexander turned 18, he won a small scholarship to study finance at a local college. By day, he attended classes, and by night, he pored over stock market charts and business plans. Through a combination of frugality, some early wins in tech stocks, and unrelenting ambition, he managed to save a nest egg by the time he graduated. His big break came shortly after college when he convinced a real estate developer named Richard Greenwood to invest in his first entrepreneurial venture, a boutique consulting firm that specialized in turnarounds for failing restaurants. The city was full of eateries struggling to keep doors open, and Alexander's innovative approach, combining data analysis with marketing campaigns, quickly garnered a string of success stories. Within 2 years, he sold that firm for a hefty profit. The sale marked the beginning of Alexander's meteoric rise. With the capital from his first business, he started investing in upscale properties in Manhattan, flipping penthouses and townhouse complexes. New York society whispered about the young upstart, this mysterious self-made man who never seemed to sleep, always wearing a crisp suit and an unwavering look of determination. Soon he expanded his empire into luxury hotels across the globe, each bearing the distinctive Davenport brand, each famously known for refined opulence. Alexander's hunger for success was insatiable. He developed a near-mythical aura in the media. Reporters painted him as a brilliant, if somewhat ruthless entrepreneur who always got what he wanted. Investors either admired him or feared him, often both at once. Still behind the austere and polished facade was a man who craved both validation and affection. It was this craving that would become his downfall. After racking up significant achievements in the real estate arena, Alexander found love in a place he least expected, a charity function. Amid the swirling parade of black-tie fashion, he spotted Emily Carter, a junior lawyer who specialized in pro bono cases for disadvantaged women. She stood out not just because she was stunning in an elegant navy gown, but because she radiated a kind of gentle confidence. In a room full of power players, Emily didn't seem desperate to belong. She was there because she believed in the cause. Enchanted Alexander introduced himself. Though Emily knew of him, his name was plastered across billboards and real estate headlines. She was unimpressed by grandstanding. She found his conversation more intriguing than his reputation. Where others would have gushed over his success, Emily asked about his upbringing, his values, his future aspirations beyond business. Alexander felt a rare sense of being truly seen. Their first talk extended well past midnight, long after everyone else left the gala. Their courtship was swift, yet profound. Emily admired Alexander's focus, though she also saw glimpses of vulnerabilities he tried to hide. She discovered he had nightmares about returning to poverty. She learned he sometimes obsessed over controlling everything around him, from board meetings to personal relationships. Yet she was convinced that beneath the ambition lay a good man who wanted to make a mark on the world. The glitzy restaurants, the chauffeur-driven Bentleys, and the private jets were all part of his life, but Emily accepted it with grace rather than giddy excitement. Alexander, in turn, found Emily's moral compass compelling. For him, the chaos of cutthroat business transactions was balanced by her genuine warmth. Within a year, they married in a lavish ceremony at the Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan. Society pages raved about the union. Alexander Davenport and Emily Carter tie the knot in an opulent ceremony fitting of New York's power couple. Pundits speculated about how this union could form an unstoppable philanthropic force, the savvy millionaire plus the benevolent lawyer. For a while, that indeed seemed true. In the first few years of marriage, the couple embarked on philanthropic ventures, establishing the Davenport-Carter Foundation to support women's shelters, educational programs, and entrepreneurial grants. In these early days, their marriage was stable, perhaps even idyllic. They were the picture-perfect power couple at black-tie fundraisers, featured in glossy magazines, though Emily often shunned the limelight as much as possible. However, as Alexander's empire grew, so did the demands on his time and his ego. There were business trips to Dubai, Singapore, London, and Paris. Emily found herself increasingly alone in their sprawling Manhattan penthouse, forging her own path in the legal world, taking on high-profile pro bono cases that demanded her attention. The once close bond between them began to stretch under the strain of success, distance, and unspoken insecurities. They maintained appearances for a while, smiling for cameras and attending events together. But each felt the subtle cracks forming in their relationship. Emily sometimes lamented the late-night business dinners and weekend conferences. Alexander felt misunderstood, believing he had to chase every deal to preserve their lavish lifestyle and secure their future. What neither of them realized was that Alexander's unrelenting pursuit of power would usher in a temptation that would threaten to unravel everything they had built together. Clarissa Monroe first appeared in Alexander's life as a whisper on the outskirts of a party he hosted to celebrate the opening of his new hotel in Midtown Manhattan. While Alexander was used to seeing glamorous socialites, entrepreneurs, and minor celebrities, Clarissa was different. She was introduced to him by a mutual acquaintance who swore she was an aspiring wellness guru from Los Angeles. But the moment Clarissa looked at Alexander, he felt a potent combination of intrigue and warning. She had that kind of beauty that was both mesmerizing and dangerous, perfectly styled dark hair, smoldering eyes, and a playful smile that hinted she was privy to secrets no one else knew. Over the next few months, Clarissa started popping up at the same social gatherings Alexander frequented. She was always cordial, always wearing a dazzling outfit, always offering flattery that felt tailor-made to stroke his ego. With each chance meeting, her conversations grew a bit more personal, asking about his life, hinting at how she admired his business acumen, praising him with a fervor that reawakened a part of Alexander that loved being at the center of attention. Emily was often busy with her legal work or traveling for foundation initiatives, so Alexander found himself alone at events more frequently. Clarissa, always ready with a bright smile and an enchanting laugh, filled the gaps. Her flattery felt like fresh oxygen for a man who constantly battled the fear of not being enough, despite all his wealth and accolades. What started as harmless networking soon escalated. Clarissa would text him late at night with quick jokes or interesting news articles. Sometimes she'd mention a new restaurant or lounge opening, asking if he'd like to join her. Emily, trusting and preoccupied, never suspected anything more than Alexander expanding his social circle. But lines blurred when Clarissa began attending Alexander's out-of-town business trips. She conveniently showed up in Miami, where he was scouting a property, or in Los Angeles for a meeting with film industry investors. The world of the rich and influential is small, so such coincidences weren't surprising until they kept happening. One night, in a rooftop bar in Beverly Hills, after a long day of meetings, Clarissa cornered Alexander with a sultry look. Fueled by whiskey and ambition, he succumbed to her advances. The fling started as sporadic, filled with secrecy and guilt. Alexander's phone lit up at odd hours with messages from Clarissa, and he found excuses to fly to the West Coast more often. Clarissa reveled in the thrill, teasing him, making him promise small gifts and luxurious getaways. Over time, their affair solidified into a bizarre relationship. He was enthralled by her magnetic presence. She was enthralled by his influence, money, and powerful connections. Alexander tried to push aside pangs of conscience, rationalizing that it was just a temporary distraction. He told himself that it would never threaten his marriage. But as Clarissa became a fixture in his private life, her demands grew. She wanted more than secret rendezvous. She wanted status, public acknowledgement, and if not official recognition, at least the perks that came with being on a millionaire's arm. She thrived on drama, often provoking jealousy or staging arguments just to watch Alexander scramble to keep her happy. Nothing alarmed Alexander more than how comfortable he became with this dangerous double life. He still loved Emily in his own way, loved her integrity, her sincerity, and the future they had planned. But he had an addiction to Clarissa's brand of chaos, an addiction that would prove catastrophic. Oblivious to the darkest corners of her husband's new social labyrinth, Emily Davenport was on the verge of discovering a miracle of her own. She was pregnant. For months, Emily had felt fatigued and emotionally drained. She attributed it to her demanding caseload, supporting domestic abuse victims, fighting for their legal rights, and navigating the complexities of philanthropy. She also worried about Alexander's late nights and incessant traveling. They had discussed having a child at some point, but the conversation was always overshadowed by Alexander's business expansions. One evening, feeling particularly ill, Emily took a home pregnancy test on a whim. As the indicator turned positive, tears gathered in her eyes, tears of disbelief, followed by a wave of excitement. An entirely new dimension of life and hope appeared before her. She was going to be a mother, yet a budding anxiety gnawed at her. Alexander had been distant lately, more calls behind closed doors, a new password on his phone, subtle changes that made Emily suspect something was off. She had no evidence of infidelity, but an uneasy vibe lingered. In the spirit of positivity, she decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. After all, they had always been a team, and this baby might just anchor them back into the closeness they once shared. Emily approached the subject delicately. She planned a romantic dinner at home one night, cooking his favorite meal, pan-seared salmon with dill sauce, accompanied by a side of creamy risotto. The moment Alexander walked in, weary from a day of back-to-back meetings, she attempted to lift his spirits with a gentle hug. He seemed distracted, glancing at his phone every few seconds. Finally, over a candlelit table, Emily revealed the news. "Alexander, we're going to be parents." For a moment, his face lit up with genuine surprise and joy. He stood, walked over to her, and kissed her forehead tenderly. "Emily, I'm speechless." His eyes glistened, and for a fleeting instant, Emily saw the man she fell in love with, the man unafraid to be vulnerable. He cradled her in his arms, whispering words of reassurance. "We'll be an amazing family. Our child will never have to want for anything. I'll be there every step of the way, I promise." But even as he spoke, a flicker of guilt gnawed at him. He was lying, by omission, concealing the grotesque truth that he was entangled with another woman, and that if Clarissa had her way, she could sabotage everything at any time. For Emily, though, that night was a memory she stored in her heart. Hope welled up that their marriage might return to its former glory, that Alexander would curb his restless pursuits and focus on building a happy home. She promised herself that once the baby arrived, their bond would solidify. Little did she know that an earthquake was about to shake her world. Clarissa Monroe's life revolved around spectacle. She thrived on social media, counting likes and comments with the same intensity that a broker monitors stocks. Her accounts were filled with glamorous photos from five-star resorts, designer outfits, and cryptic quotes alluding to a sumptuous life. She garnered attention through half-truths, innuendos, and photos of her with influential people like Alexander Davenport. When she missed her period twice in a row, alarm bells rang. At first, Clarissa thought it might be a fluke stress or lifestyle changes. But curiosity and a shrewd opportunism led her to test. The lines turned pink. She was pregnant. Part of her panicked. She wasn't sure if she wanted a baby, and the father was a married man, known for fiercely protecting his reputation. Another part of her saw an opportunity. A baby could be her ticket to the big leagues, ensuring financial security and a place in Alexander's life that transcended secrecy. But she also questioned if it might be more powerful to keep the pregnancy as leverage or even to orchestrate a dramatic reveal. Before she even told Alexander, Clarissa did something reckless and catty. Perhaps it was the swirling hormones, or maybe it was just her innate thirst for attention. She posted a grainy ultrasound photo on her Instagram story, captioning it with a winking emoji and the phrase, "Can't wait to meet my new partner in crime." Stad blessed Asha. Her surprise. She teased her followers with the possibility that she was pregnant or that it might be a friend's baby or a pet project. The ambiguity was enough to ignite speculation among her circle of socialites and influencers. To Clarissa, it was a joke, a twisted way to toy with public curiosity and with Alexander's nerves. She hadn't yet confirmed to him in private that she was pregnant. While she giggled at the storm of speculation brewing in her DMs, she neglected one crucial detail: gossip in high society travels at light speed. Alexander found out about Clarissa's post through a mutual friend, Patricia Lightwood, a public relations specialist who managed celebrities' reputations. Patricia texted Alexander a screenshot with the message, "Please tell me this isn't yours. People are talking." Stomach churning, Alexander hurriedly scrolled through Clarissa's profile. Although the post had vanished from her story after 24 hours, screenshots and whispers had already proliferated. People were asking who the father might be. Several tabloids and gossip sites picked it up, speculating that Clarissa Monroe, alleged to be seeing a mystery millionaire, was pregnant. Panicked Alexander called Clarissa. "What the hell is going on? Why would you do that?" he spat, trying to maintain a hushed tone as Emily was in the next room. Clarissa's sweet, manipulative voice curled around the phone line. "Calm down, darling. It's just social media fun. I didn't even say it's mine for sure. No one knows anything, unless they make assumptions like you are right now." Alexander forced himself to breathe. "Are you actually pregnant?" She paused. "Yes, I am. And it's yours." His thoughts scrambled. Emily was pregnant with his child as well. This was the last thing he wanted. He remembered Emily's glowing face when she shared their miraculous news, how hopeful she was about their future as a family. Now, his double life was on the brink of exploding. He told Clarissa to keep quiet, to delete any and all references on social media, and to meet him to discuss the matter discreetly. Little did he realize that the gossip would soon reach the one person who mattered most, Emily. One evening, Emily was relaxing on the couch, her mind dancing with baby names. She'd just completed a strenuous court case, defending a single mother in a custody battle. Tired, yet triumphant, she scrolled casually through social media, where she noticed a friend's cryptic post referencing that LA influencer's baby drama. Curious Emily clicked a few links and found herself on a gossip blog. There she saw screenshots of Clarissa Monroe's ultrasound post. In the screen captures there was no direct mention of Alexander's name, but the blog speculated about a wealthy married man in real estate. Emily felt a nauseating chill creep through her body. She saw the timing, the rumors swirling around an A-list magnate, and recognized Clarissa from a photo she'd once seen in a business lounge with Alexander. Her heart pounded. Could it be a coincidence? She tried to rationalize. Alexander was many things, but a cheater. This was the father of her unborn child. She refused to jump to conclusions until she remembered the private calls, the secretive business trips, and that new passcode on his phone. Clutching her phone, Emily's hands began to tremble. A swirl of anger and heartbreak enveloped her. She searched for more details, found more tangential clues. Clarissa had been seen with Alexander in Los Angeles at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Photographs, though inconclusive, suggested an intimacy that went beyond business. Emily confronted him that night. She waited until he finished a conference call, then asked calmly, "Alexander, who is Clarissa Monroe?" He froze for a split second, just long enough for her to notice. "She's an acquaintance, an influencer. I met her at some networking events." Emily's voice wavered, but her determination hardened her resolve. "I've seen the rumors. They say she's pregnant by a wealthy married real estate tycoon. Are you the father?" Alexander couldn't meet her eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about, Em," he began, attempting to muster denial. But Emily's unwavering gaze bore into him, tears brimming her face, a mixture of hurt and outrage. She demanded the truth. Despite his best efforts to spin the story or minimize his involvement, the evidence was damning. His half-baked denials crumbled under Emily's cross-examination. She was, after all, a brilliant lawyer. A wailing silence settled in the penthouse. Once the truth emerged, he had an affair, and Clarissa was indeed pregnant. Shattered, Emily locked herself in the guest bedroom for the night, sobbing into her pillow. She felt the baby flutter in her womb, a reminder that she had a life to protect, a future that needed clarity. In that moment, heartbreak collided with steely determination. She resolved that if Alexander had compromised their marriage and potentially their unborn child's future, there would be consequences, grave ones. The initial confrontation was just the beginning of the storm. In the days that followed, tabloids picked up on the drama. Clarissa, thirsty for relevance, neither confirmed nor denied her rumored pregnancy. She posted more ambiguous quotes, fueling speculation. When one door closes, a penthouse window opens. Her cryptic references sent the media into a frenzy. Was she referencing Alexander Davenport's penthouse? Emily, too furious and hurt to endure the spectacle in silence, took a proactive step. She contacted Greg Warren, a trusted divorce attorney she occasionally worked with on complex cases. She knew she had to protect herself and her unborn child from the potential fallout, both financial and emotional. She also sought counsel from Dr. Jonathan Rutherford, a therapist who specialized in high-profile marital issues, to keep her sanity intact amid the chaos. Behind the scenes, Alexander scrambled to manage the public relations nightmare. He hired crisis PR specialists to spin the narrative in his favor, or at least keep it from escalating further. But Clarissa refused to lie low. She relished the attention, tiptoeing the line between scandal and influencer fame. The paparazzi snapped her, leaving an obstetrician's office, fueling endless speculation about the identity of the father. On a sweltering afternoon, Emily received the results of a private investigation she commissioned. The detective provided detailed reports of Alexander and Clarissa's months-long affair, replete with hotel confirmations, flight itineraries, and even photographs. The heartbreak that coursed through Emily was immeasurable. Yet with every new piece of evidence, her determination grew. And that was the moment she decided to act. If Clarissa wanted to play with an ultrasound as a joke, Emily, a seasoned lawyer, would retaliate the best way she knew how, through the law. She had Greg Warren draft a summons for divorce proceedings, complete with demands for hefty spousal support, child support for their unborn child, and potential legal action for emotional distress if the affair impacted her health. She also informed Alexander in no uncertain terms that she would do everything to ensure Clarissa did not drag her family's name through the mud. The official summons was served to Alexander on a Friday, delivered by a court-appointed server who arrived at Alexander's plush Midtown office. As he signed for the envelope, employees in the reception area looked on, shocked at the meltdown of a man they idolized. On the same day, Emily posted a brief statement on her social media account. "It is with deep sadness that I confirm I have begun legal proceedings against my husband, Alexander Davenport. My primary focus remains the well-being of my unborn child. I request privacy and understanding during this difficult time." In a single moment, the veneer of the perfect Davenport marriage shattered for the world to see. The press had a field day. Millionaire mogul served divorce papers amid infidelity scandal, read the tabloids. Interviews were requested from Emily's camp, from Alexander's camp, from Clarissa's camp, though only Emily's lawyers responded, reiterating her desire for privacy. Alexander found himself caught between two legal battles, the dissolution of his marriage and the impending paternity demands from Clarissa. She was no longer satisfied with cryptic posts. She wanted recognition and financial security. She threatened to file a suit to confirm paternity and secure child support. And if Alexander refused, she promised to sell her story to the highest bidder tabloids, talk shows, or reality TV producers. The more the scandal escalated, the more she saw dollar signs and a twisted form of fame. Emily, meanwhile, was besieged with a maelstrom of emotions. She battled morning sickness and heartbreak simultaneously. Though part of her wanted to curl up and grieve, another part remained resolute. She had a baby to protect. She also had a battered sense of self-worth to reclaim. She sought solace in her friends like Patricia Lightwood, who reassured her that public opinion largely sympathized with the wronged wife. Alexander felt helpless. His empire was stable enough financially, but the reputational hit could scare off key investors, tarnish his philanthropic image, and even jeopardize future projects. The man who once controlled every aspect of his life was now at the mercy of lawyers, scandal-hungry media, and the unpredictable tantrums of his mistress. Sitting in his otherwise pristine office, he stared at the official documents delivered by Emily's attorney's summons and complaint for divorce. Each page felt heavier than the last. He saw references to irreconcilable differences, adultery, and emotional distress. In a separate complaint, Emily's lawyers requested full custody of the child until further arrangement and a thorough accounting of Alexander's assets. For once in his life, Alexander Davenport could not buy his way out of trouble with a simple check. This was a war fought in the courts with public sentiment and with personal heartbreak. He recognized too late that this might be the downfall of everything he had worked for, perhaps even the loss of the only woman he had ever truly loved. Amid the swirling chaos, an unexpected development shattered assumptions and remapped the entire battlefield. Clarissa had pushed Alexander to arrange a prenatal paternity test. Convinced she had him cornered, she smirked as she gave blood samples to the lab. Alexander, too, provided his samples, hoping to confirm paternity and possibly contain the damage. Days passed like an eternity for Alexander. He dreaded the test would confirm that Clarissa's child was indeed his. But the results painted a shocking picture. Alexander was not the father. The test concluded with 0% probability of paternity. Alexander's immediate reaction was disbelief, followed by a strange surge of relief. If the child wasn't his, Clarissa no longer held that nuclear option over him. But then came a wave of anger. She had manipulated him, threatened him, posted an ultrasound, and wrecked his marriage based on a lie. Furious Alexander confronted Clarissa at her apartment in Los Angeles. When he brandished the test results, Clarissa's confident veneer wavered. She insisted the test had to be wrong, that labs could make mistakes. But it was undeniable if science said he wasn't the father. The entire premise of her joke and claims fell apart. Despite this revelation, the damage was done. Emily's trust was shattered. The press was feasting on the scandal, and their divorce proceedings were already in motion. The question loomed, could this shocking truth salvage Alexander and Emily's marriage? The same day Alexander learned he wasn't the father, he rushed to tell Emily. She was living temporarily at her friend Alicia's apartment, a cozy loft overlooking the Hudson River. Emily had retreated there to distance herself from the penthouse and all its painful memories. When Alexander showed up at her doorstep, Emily was initially furious that he dared invade her space, but he pleaded for a chance to explain. She reluctantly let him inside her arms, folded protectively over her chest, ever conscious of the life growing within her. Alexander recounted everything: Clarissa's cunning manipulations, the test results, and the final revelation that he was not the father. Emily listened, her eyes never leaving his face. Even if Clarissa had lied about the paternity, Alexander had still betrayed her. He had an affair, he humiliated her in public, and he compromised the sanctity of their marriage vows. Tears welled in Alexander's eyes as he attempted an apology. "I know I've broken everything that mattered to us. If I could turn back time, His voice cracked raw with regret. "But what I did is inexcusable. I wish I could make you understand how sorry I am." Emily remained silent for a long moment. She thought about this baby growing inside her, about the heartbreak she had felt, and the betrayal that cut deep. "Alexander, you hurt me in ways I didn't think possible. You crushed my trust, and I have our child to think about now. This changes nothing about the fact you cheated. It only changes Clarissa's role in this fiasco." She didn't slam the door in his face, but she also didn't invite him to stay. She reiterated that her primary concern was her health and the health of the baby. While Alexander's revelation might slightly lessen the public scandal, it did not absolve him of his ultimate wrongdoing. Before he left, he asked a favor. "Please, Emily, just reconsider the divorce for a moment. Think about therapy. Think about the child we have. Let me prove I can change." With tears streaming down her face, Emily simply whispered, "I'm too hurt to decide anything right now, Alexander. Leave me alone," and gently closed the door. On the other side, she leaned against it, sobbing quietly. She wasn't sure if she should forgive him or let him go forever. The revelation about Clarissa's fake paternity quickly spread through their social circles. Clarissa was slammed in tabloids for her deception. Within days, she fled Los Angeles for a retreat in Aspen, hoping to escape media scrutiny. Sponsors dropped her from promotional deals, brand endorsements evaporated, and the influencer found herself labeled a pariah. The seductive power she once wielded over Alexander disintegrated the moment her lie surfaced. Alexander, for his part, tried to refocus on what truly mattered. He scaled back his relentless business schedule, cancelled unnecessary trips, and devoted time to introspection. He even visited a counselor, Dr. Jonathan Rutherford, on his own, trying to dig into the roots of his insecurities that led to the affair. Week after week, he confronted painful memories, his childhood fear of poverty, the constant craving for validation, and the toxic cycle that lured him into dangerous liaisons. Still, every day, he wrestled with the guilt of what he had done. The betrayal sat like a lead weight on his conscience. He wasn't naive enough to believe that discovering Clarissa's lie erased his sins. He was determined, however, to be a better man, if only for the sake of his unborn child. In the midst of divorce proceedings, Emily continued her own counseling sessions, grappling with feelings of shame, anger, and heartbreak. She had to figure out whether she still loved Alexander enough to attempt reconciliation or if her shattered trust was beyond repair. Some days she felt strong, ready to raise her child independently, convinced she no longer needed Alexander's wealth or illusions of love. Other days, she remembered the early years of their marriage, the man who passionately adored her, and she wondered if that love could be salvaged. One afternoon, a letter arrived at Emily's temporary address. Inside, she found a handwritten apology from Alexander. He poured his soul onto the page, admitting every flaw, taking responsibility for every lie. "I don't expect forgiveness," the letter read, "but I want you to know that the greatest regret of my life is losing the trust of the woman I love. I will never forgive myself for putting you through this pain, but if there's any chance for us, any at all, I will do whatever it takes to earn it." Emily wept upon reading the letter. Despite everything, she couldn't deny that a part of her still cared for him. But she also had to protect herself and their child. Love might heal many wounds, but trust is a delicate tapestry. Once torn, it may never be the same. Divorce proceedings loomed. Emily's lawyer, Greg Warren, prepared meticulously to secure a fair settlement. Given Alexander's substantial assets and the moral weight of his affair, the negotiations would likely favor Emily in property division and child support. Emily, however, wasn't only after money. She wanted a sense of justice and independence. She demanded sole custody, at least initially, with visitation rights for Alexander, contingent on ongoing therapy and proven responsibility. Alexander's team proposed a settlement that included a multi-million-dollar payout, full coverage for the child's education, and partial custody once the child was born. He also insisted on creating a trust fund that would secure their baby's future. But the road to any agreement was rocky, and many sessions ended in tears, accusations, or stalemates. The media devoured every snippet of information. Bloggers dissected the potential settlement figures, speculated on Emily's emotional state, and declared Clarissa Monroe's name in vain. High society gawked, both sympathizing with Emily and judging Alexander for his fall from grace. Rumors circulated that Alexander's next big venture might collapse if he couldn't focus on business. Even some of his board members privately debated whether his personal fiasco made him a liability. In a tense, pre-court mediation session, Emily finally looked Alexander in the eyes and said, "This is not about revenge. I'm not out to ruin you. I just need to move forward with my life in a way that feels safe." Alexander nodded solemnly. "I understand," he replied, trying to steady the tremor in his voice. "But I still love you. I love our child. I want to be a father. I want to make this work, if you'll let me." Emily didn't respond. She simply gathered her papers and left, leaving Alexander standing alone in the conference room. The lawyers tried to keep matters professional, but the emotional undercurrents were impossible to ignore. The day of the hearing dawned gray and somber, matching the storm of emotion that raged inside Emily. She stood in front of the mirror, brushing down the fabric of her steel gray pantsuit. Her baby bump, once subtle, was now a prominent curve beneath her blouse. The sight gave her strength. This wasn't just a divorce hearing, this was a stand for herself, for her child, for the dignity she refused to surrender. A car waited downstairs, sent by her attorney, Greg Warren. As she stepped outside, the flash of cameras greeted her like lightning. She wore dark glasses to shield her swollen eyes, lips pressed in a thin line. This was not a performance, no matter how many lenses tried to turn it into one. Meanwhile, Alexander arrived at the courthouse through a side entrance, hoping to avoid the media frenzy. He looked gaunt, his once glowing complexion dulled by weeks of sleepless nights. The confident stride that once turned heads was replaced by something more tentative. Guilt had stripped away his armor. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Reporters, legal aides, and a few curious public observers murmured in hushed tones. Emily took her seat beside Greg, her hands resting on the edge of the table. Across from her, Alexander sat flanked by his high-priced legal team. Yet despite their expensive suits and rehearsed confidence, it was clear the emotional battlefield was far beyond what money could manage. Judge Miriam Sanderson, known for her stern fairness, entered the room and banged the gavel once. "Let's proceed." What followed was a cascade of documentation, asset evaluations, marital history, evidence of infidelity therapy records, prenatal care plans. Emily spoke first, her voice steady if strained. "I'm not here to punish Mr. Davenport, but I need to ensure our child has a stable life, one free from betrayal and public humiliation," she said, lifting her chin. He broke the sacred vows of marriage. He prioritized ego attention and lust over love, loyalty, and family. "That's not a man I can trust to co-parent without supervision, at least not yet." Alexander listened, with his hands clasped tightly together. His lawyer responded with a carefully worded defense. Mr. Davenport acknowledges his missteps, but he has demonstrated consistent engagement with therapy, taken steps to minimize media damage, and shown a genuine desire to be part of his child's life. Redemption must start somewhere, and we argue that supervised visitation leading to gradual co-parenting is in the child's best interest. Then it was Alexander's turn. He stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and looked directly at Emily. "Your Honor, I have done many things I regret. I betrayed the woman who believed in me when no one else did. I lied to someone who gave me her heart and her trust. And I jeopardized the most important thing that could ever happen to me, becoming a father. I know I cannot undo what I have done, but I can start again. For my child, I will start again." The judge observed both parties for a long moment, tapping her pen against the folder. Then she called for a recess. Outside the courtroom, Emily stepped into a quiet hallway and leaned against a marble pillar, trying to catch her breath. That's when Alexander appeared. For a while, neither spoke. Then he broke the silence. "You look beautiful," he said softly, eyes lingering on her baby bump. "How's the baby?" Emily gave a small nod. "She's strong. Kicks like she means it." "I hope she gets your strength," Alexander said, "and your conscience." Emily turned to face him fully. "Strength is a learned skill, Alexander. I didn't think I had it until I needed it." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I wish I'd realized what mattered before it was too late." "I don't know what the judge will decide," she said, her voice trembling. "But I do know this: I won't let anyone, not even you, compromise her future." He nodded, stepping back respectfully as the bailiff called them in. Back inside, the final decision was read aloud by Judge Sanderson. Emily was granted primary custody with full decision-making rights for the first year. Alexander was allowed supervised visits twice a week, with the possibility of expanding those rights contingent on continued therapy parenting courses and co-parenting participation. A structured financial settlement followed. Emily would receive monthly spousal support until the child turned one child support, consistent with Alexander's income bracket, and a separate trust fund set up for their daughter's future education and health needs. Their Manhattan penthouse would be sold and proceeds divided, with Emily granted temporary residence until she chose to relocate. The courtroom fell silent as the gavel came down. It was over. Outside, the flash of cameras intensified. Emily, walking steadily beside Greg, made no statement. Alexander left through a different exit, head down, walking into a car that sped away into the uncertain dusk. But deep inside, something shifted. Not an ending, a reckoning. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something stronger than either had imagined, if only for their daughter. Time passed slowly after the courtroom battle. Though the final gavel had dropped and the settlement was in place, the emotional aftermath lingered like smoke after a fire. Emily had moved into a quiet townhome, tucked near the Hudson River, far from the relentless, flashing lights of Manhattan. It was a modest, elegant space, high ceilings, soft natural light, and a small nursery she decorated herself with calming earth tones. The new environment allowed her to breathe, to think, and most importantly, to prepare for the baby in peace. Though her heart still ached, the absence of daily confrontation offered clarity. The anger didn't vanish, but it dulled into something more manageable. She focused on her work part-time, easing into a new rhythm. Her colleagues, admirers of her strength, never pushed her for details. In courtrooms, she remained sharp. In life, she learned how to begin again. Alexander, on the other hand, had changed in quieter, more profound ways. The scandal had stripped away his pride, but in its place grew something rare in a man so used to power humility. He showed up for every mandated therapy session, often staying after to ask deeper questions about his patterns. He kept a journal. He walked through Central Park instead of taking a town car, letting the ordinary world settle around him for once. More importantly, he reached out to Emily, never forcefully, never with entitlement. He emailed updates about his therapy progress, shared observations on co-parenting, and occasionally sent letters, actual handwritten notes, sealed and respectful. Some were brief. "Lily deserves the best version of me. I'm working on that." Others were longer, introspective. "When I built my empire, I thought I was creating safety. I didn't realize I was building walls that kept love out." Emily rarely replied, but she read them all. As her due date approached, complications emerged. Her blood pressure rose, her OBGYN warned of preeclampsia, and strict bed rest was ordered. She hated being confined, but Alicia, her ever-reliable friend, moved in to assist. They laughed, cried, and reorganized the nursery drawers more times than necessary, just to keep their spirits high. One rainy afternoon, while sorting through baby clothes, Emily reread Alexander's latest letter. It wasn't dramatic or manipulative. It was simple: "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I will never stop earning the right to be present for Lily and for the memory of who we used to be." The words stirred something in her. Maybe it was the hormones, or maybe it was the truth in his tone. Either way, she picked up the phone and called him. Alexander answered on the first ring. "Emily, I'm at St. Gabriel's," she said, voice steady but weary. The contractions started earlier than expected. "Are you alone? Alicia's here, but if you want to be part of this, you should come now." He didn't waste a second. Within the hour, Alexander stood outside her hospital room, breathless and soaked from a sprint through the downpour. He hesitated at the doorway, unsure if he was welcome inside. But when Emily reached out her hand wordlessly, he crossed the room and took it, gently lowering himself into the seat beside her bed. The hours that followed were a blur of monitors, measured breathing, and whispered reassurances. Alexander held her hand through every contraction, wiping sweat from her brow, murmuring, "You're doing amazing, Em. I'm right here." And then finally, Lily arrived. The room was filled with the cries of new life. Emily, exhausted and tearful, held her daughter to her chest. Alexander stood by, stunned into silence by the sight. When a nurse gently offered him the chance to hold Lily, he hesitated at first, then nodded. She was so small, so perfect. In that moment, Alexander Davenport, real estate titan, media magnate man who had made 1,000 mistakes, was just a father in awe of his child. Tears ran silently down his cheeks. "She looks like you," he whispered. Emily watched him carefully. The sight of Alexander cradling their daughter stirred something tender. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. She saw sincerity in his trembling hands, in the way he shielded Lily from the sterile lights with his shoulder. Over the next few days, Emily remained in the hospital recovering. Alexander stayed in a nearby hotel, visiting each morning with coffee and fresh flowers. He never pushed, never lingered too long. He let Emily set the pace. On Lily's third day, Emily invited him to stay the full night. They sat in silence together, Lily nestled in Alexander's arms, cooing softly. Emily broke the quiet. "She'll need both of us, not just in court-ordered visits or weekend handoffs. She'll need stability. I know, Alexander said, and I want to give her that. I want to give you that if you ever let me. Emily looked at him, her expression unreadable. I don't know what we'll be, Alexander. I can't promise anything, but I'm not closing the door anymore. For Lily's sake, and maybe for ours. Alexander exhaled, the smallest smile forming. That night, as Lily slept in the bassinet between them, Emily and Alexander shared a rare kind of peace, fragile, hopeful, and new. It was not reconciliation. It was not resolution. But it was perhaps the start of redemption. The days after Lily's birth were exhausting and emotional in ways Emily had never anticipated. Motherhood arrived not in some sweeping cinematic moment, but in quiet, repetitive acts of love, feeding at 3 a.m. Soft lullabies whispered against a baby's downy scalp, fumbling through diaper changes on 2 hours of sleep. And through it all, Alexander was there, tentative at first, then gradually more confident. Emily had allowed him to visit daily, though always with clearly defined boundaries. He respected those lines with meticulous care. Every morning, he arrived on time with groceries, baby wipes, and takeout from her favorite deli. Every evening, he left when she asked no questions, no protests. What surprised Emily most wasn't just his consistency, but the gentleness in his eyes when he looked at Lily, or the patience in his voice when the baby cried for an hour without reason. They no longer spoke as husband and wife. Their conversations revolved around feeding schedules, pediatrician appointments, and diaper brands. But something unspoken softened between them, a fragile rhythm born not from romance, but from responsibility and perhaps regret. One rainy afternoon, Alexander surprised her by offering to stay with Lily for a few hours so Emily could nap. She hesitated at first, but exhaustion won out, and she curled up on the couch while Alexander rocked Lily near the window, humming an old tune from his childhood. When she woke, it was to the sound of soft laughter, Alexander blowing raspberries into Lily's tummy while she squealed with delight. That night, as he helped pack up baby clothes that no longer fit, Emily finally said aloud what had weighed on her mind. "You're different," she said quietly, "not just pretending." Alexander paused, folding a tiny onesie. "I had to be," he replied. "I lost everything I cared about. If I didn't change, what kind of father would I be?" He didn't ask for forgiveness. That was another difference. The man who once used charm and charisma to sidestep accountability now only offered quiet honesty. Clarissa, by contrast, had disappeared into obscurity. Her social media presence dwindled into silence after sponsors and followers alike turned their backs. Rumors circulated that she'd moved to Arizona, taking freelance wellness gigs to pay the bills. Occasionally, her name would flare up in gossip blogs, some ill-advised podcast appearance, or a desperate attempt to reclaim relevance, but none of it stuck. Her scandal had turned her into a cautionary tale, not a star. Emily, however, had become something else entirely respected. The legal community applauded her grace under fire. Former clients sent her thank you letters inspired by her strength. Her foundation gained new donors, many of them single mothers or women recovering from betrayal. She resumed her legal work, slowly working from home, and choosing only the cases that stirred her passion. Alexander noticed it all. Her strength, her poise, the way she smiled at Lily when no one was watching. He didn't try to press for more than co-parenting. But one day, as they sat on a park bench, watching Lily nap in her stroller, he spoke the words he had rehearsed 100 times. "I miss us." Emily didn't respond right away. She watched a golden retriever bound across the lawn after a tennis ball, then turned to him. "I miss who we used to be." before everything. I think about that too, Alexander said, about how I let ambition and ego destroy something sacred. I don't expect things to go back. I just hope maybe someday we could build something new, even if it's just peace. She studied his face, looking for old habits, old reflexes. But what she saw instead was humility earned, not feigned. Her heart didn't leap. It ached, because forgiveness wasn't a switch. It was a garden. And maybe, just maybe, something small had begun to grow. A few weeks later, Emily suggested a family outing, the Central Park Zoo. It was Lily's first time seeing animals up close. She shrieked with laughter at the seals, reached toward the glass at the penguins, and clung to Alexander's finger as he lifted her to see the giraffes. For a moment, they were just a family. No scandal, no courtroom, just parents watching their child discover the world. Later, as they walked home, Lily asleep in her stroller, Alexander gently said, "Thank you for today." Emily glanced at him. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for her." I know, he nodded, "but still thank you." Back at her doorstep, she didn't invite him in. But she didn't pull away when he kissed Lily on the forehead or when his fingers brushed hers as she took the stroller handle. That night, Emily sat by the window, watching the city lights shimmer against the dark sky. The future still held questions, but one thing was certain: their daughter had changed everything. And through her, maybe the road forward didn't have to be walked alone. In the end, life rarely fits into neat, fairy tale endings. Alexander Davenport's affair with Clarissa Monroe shattered his marriage with Emily. But from those broken pieces came new beginnings. The scandal that once dominated headlines faded, replaced by two parents determined to give their daughter the love and stability she deserved. Healing trust took time. Forgiveness came in stages, and reconciliation, if it happened, would be slow and deliberate. Yet beneath the heartbreak, Alexander and Emily found a deeper humility, a stronger devotion to Lily, and a renewed sense of purpose. If you found this story riveting, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more dramatic tales that lift the curtain on wealth, scandal, and the human heart. Your support helps bring these stories to life, and we can't wait to share the next unforgettable journey with you. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.